You know, there's that talk about what is dementia and Alzheimer's, and I think just to start off, dementia is sort of that umbrella term, and under dementia you have Alzheimer's disease, which is about 60 to 70% of all people living with this impairment. The most common ones are issues with short-term memory, being able to retain information, processing information. I mean, I would hear some things, you know, I would be in meetings, and it wasn't processing in my brain, and I really wasn't understanding what I was hearing. So I'd say information processing is a big one, and just forgetfulness. I would say those are the most common things with early stage. As it goes further, then it's more about the function, more difficulty maybe dressing, the inability to drive, preparing food. I was the assistant city manager. I was there in Fayetteville for a little more than 5 years. Prior to that, I worked for the city of Durham for over 20 years. My role with the city of Fayetteville was as an assistant city manager. I oversaw I think it was 5 or 6 city departments. So it was really the overall management of those departments. But I started to notice, you know, I'm 60 now, at probably 56, 57, I started noticing issues with my memory. I also started working longer hours, which I wasn't really sure why, but it was taking me longer to do the job. And in meetings, and I remember a meeting in particular where we were talking about hurricane recovery, and I was over like all the federal funding, so all of that stuff I had a really good understanding of. And I'm in a meeting with the city manager, Doug Hewitt, and I think our city attorney and some other managers, and they were asking me basic questions which I couldn't remember. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I didn't know this stuff. So they said, well, we'll get back to that. And I went back to my office and I was like, what is going on? So at first I attributed it to information overload. You know, do I just have way too much on my plate? And after more of little things happening, I decided to reach out. A friend of mine is a neurologist at Duke, and I had a neuropsychological test. And that test sort of gave me that baseline. And they had some questions with it, but they said, come back, and I think it was 6 or 7 months, and they saw a decline in my memory. And then it was at that time, they ran more tests, I had an MRI, and then I had a PET scan. And one of the things on a PET scan, and it's specifically an amyloid PET scan, if they detect amyloid, there's a really good chance that you probably have Alzheimer's disease. So that was when I remember my wife and I sitting down with Dr. O'Brien at Duke, and he said to us that it looks like you have early stage Alzheimer's disease. I sort of went into a dark place after that, you know, and I just didn't really know what to do, because the first thing I thought about is my career is over. You know, no one's going to want anyone in an organization at a higher level with a disease that impairs your cognitive ability making decisions. So it took about a week and just sort of going back and forth with my wife and family, and finally I went into the city manager and I went into the HR director and I said, this is the deal. And I will tell you, they were so incredibly supportive. They allowed me to sort of transition out of the organization on my terms. And you know, over 6 months, it gave me the opportunity to share it with my employees. It was like a weight lifted off of my shoulders, because I was really embarrassed by it, that I had this disease at such a young age, but the compassion, the outreach that people gave to me, just the support was unbelievable. But I had an opportunity, I thought, because I'm a very outgoing person, and I could raise awareness, and I could educate folks about the disease. And most importantly, and what I tell everyone I can, it's reducing stigma. I'm now 60, And the first thing people say, they look at me, you don't look like you have Alzheimer's disease. And I say, well, what should we look like? And I think that by reducing that stigma, letting people know we can be productive, we can do things with our lives, and I'm very busy. And that activity, that socialization is, I mean, there's scientific research behind it. It helps slow things down with the progression. So, you know, I can only say that while it's not a great diagnosis because there's no cure, there is a new treatment, and there are 2 medications that I take, Aricept and Namenda, that help address the symptoms, but they don't slow down the progression, and it's no cure for the disease. Oh, the Jaywalkers are a group of city employees, PwC employees, just citizens in this community. There's also the City of Durham Jaywalkers, folks that are out there to support Alzheimer's Association research. And that walk team now has raised, this year, we're going to hit over $100,000 for Alzheimer's research, making us one of the top fundraising teams in North Carolina, which I'm really proud of. But it's also amazing to see folks that some of them have a connection to the disease, some have no connection to the disease, all understanding they want to find a cure. 6 million people in this country are living with the disease. They're estimating in 2050, over 14 million people will be living with the disease without a cure. PwC, I have to just give them a huge plug because they have done fundraisers with putt-putt golf, with bowling, and this year the concession stand at the Woodpeckers games. And we've raised thousands of dollars doing this. These are folks that have busy lives that make it a point to say, you know what, this is important. It's not just about me. It's about, you know, hopefully finding a cure for a disease that impacts so many people in this country and the world. We hope with our t-shirt sales, the Jaywalker t-shirts, we sell them, we also give them to people if they raise a certain amount of money. We've changed the logo every year, the image. This year it's walk this way with Jay to end Alzheimer's. And we have a picture of me and Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, because Aerosmith and Run DMC did the song Walk This Way. So sort of a cute little thing, but more importantly, on the back of the shirt, we had PwC employees and City of Fayetteville employees submit to me names of their loved ones that are either living with the disease or who have died from Alzheimer's disease. And it's really dedicated to those, I think, 80 or 90 people that have names on the back of the shirt. So again, people can buy the shirts. I think we're selling them for $30. And just about all of that goes to, again, Alzheimer's research and hoping to find that cure. 8 years ago, we had about $400 million a year going to research through the NIH. Through advocacy, through people like myself and the thousands of others across the country that annually walk on the steps of the Capitol and talk to our elected officials, we're now up to $3.2 billion. We've gone from $400 million in 8 years to $3.2 billion. That is all based on advocacy. So for me, it's talking to community groups, talking to the media, letting people know about the signs of Alzheimer's, talking about the Alzheimer's Association, the chapters out in the around the country. Again, it's a pretty large organization, and it was founded just about 40 years ago. So it's only been around, I think, since 1981, 82. It was just a great opportunity, and I'm going to continue advocating and traveling and do anything I can to raise awareness and educate. The best thing to do for anyone interested in anything Alzheimer's is alz.org. alz.org. There is so much information about current research going on. There's also a thing called Trial Match, and you can Google Trial Match, and that talks about all the clinical trials going on. Something really important here. The first drug ever to slow down the progression was approved by the FDA in June, called Aduhelm. But the really exciting news is there's 3 or 4 other drugs right now in the pipeline. One is hopefully going to be coming out early next year by Eli Lilly. That shows even more promise than the current drug for removing amyloid plaque and slowing down the progression. I am hoping to get one of these 2 drugs sometime early next year, because again, if it means quality time of 1 or 2 more years with my family, my wife, my kids, my grandkids, it is so worthwhile to me. So again, it might not seem like a lot to many people who have many years ahead of them, but if I give me another 1 or 2 years, my God, it's worth so much. The things that I always recommend is, walking. Exercise, walking 30 to 40 minutes a day, which I try to do most of the time, is really important. There's scientific science that supports that. The other thing is diet. They say the Mediterranean diet is the best diet for you, specifically if you have Alzheimer's. They say, these are things that you should be doing all the time. And the other thing is trying to reduce stress in your life, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. But I think the most important thing to me is that ability, socialization. Being out there, not isolating yourself, because when you do isolate yourself, and I know people that I've met along my journey, their progression seems to be faster. So getting out there, going out to eat, going to restaurants, being with friends, movies, whatever it may be, so important. And then of course there are amazing resources with the Alzheimer's Association, just going online, alz.org. There's a plethora of stuff out there. So, again, there are resources out there, and don't be afraid and don't be ashamed. This is something that impacts so many people. And if you start thinking that maybe you have an issue, it might not be anything, talk to your doctor.